I'd looked up on the internet what you can do for that, and somebody had said, oh, turmeric. Place your bum in a bucket of hot water with turmeric, the powder. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm on fire. Turmeric doesn't work for that.
Annette, how did you find Carnivore?
Oh, hello, Dave. Thanks for having me on. I've not had the weight loss stories that some of your clients have had, or your interviewees, but it's been a really long, drawn-out story for me. And I've thought about this. Oh my goodness, when can I start? If Dave asked me that question, and I decided to start at 2018 when I reached a sort of rock bottom in my life. Absolutely, I was at my last. I can't live like this anymore, and I went to the doctors and said, look, I've been eating the most healthy diet for years, and I've had this problem, and I've tried to add in even more fiber, because everyone keeps on telling me, oh, you need more fiber. I bought this stuff called inulin from a health food shop, which was like sawdust basically, and my stomach had blown up into this enormous, huge, great. I mean, it was like I was pregnant, and it was so painful, and I'd been feeling wretched for months. Basically, there's a sort of wretchedness that you just feel like you've got no energy, and it's a horrible feeling, and I thought, this cannot be right. And my daughter, it sort of was triggered by my daughter, and she took me aside one day and said, look, Mum, you eat the healthiest diet more than anyone. You don't eat processed foods, you eat all the fruit and veg, you don't eat fatty meat, but you're the illest person I know. And I was like, that's true, I am. And so what is it? So anyway, I went to the doctor and the GP, and in those days you could get an appointment. And she said, oh, well, I think I'll refer you to the hospital for to see a dietitian. And so I was relieved. And when I met the dietitian, I told my whole story. She then put me forward to a different dietitian, which was a sort of the FODMAP lady. And that FODMAP is the fermentable carbohydrates, which I had never heard of. I was completely ignorant of all this. I just believed what they told me was to eat more fiber, eat the healthy fruit and veg, stay away from fat, lean meat and all that. Anyway, when I got to her, I was absolutely gobsmacked that they've now printed, I've got these, they'd be back to front, but these are printed copies of what she gave me, 3 pamphlets all about the FODMAP diet. So they know it exists. And she said to me that some people can't digest carbohydrate very well. And I thought, really? I'd never heard of that. And basically, I went back and back and back. It was quite good in the fact that she managed to get me off that, because I was obsessed with all this fruit and veg, even though it was killing me every day. I was in agony, but I still carried on believing. I mean, it's amazing how blind I could be to not try anything else. I feel like I'm a bit of a fool, really, there. Anyway, but she did wake me up to thinking, actually, and she get in those pamphlets, there's a lot of information about which foods are the sort of danger ones, the high FODMAP, and which are the low FODMAP. And the idea was to keep having appointments, try different things, try to reduce, because she's obviously seen other people. She hadn't really seen anyone like me, though, because I'd already got rid of all the processed foods. And in these books, it's all about which processed foods you can have and which you can't have. But I was really only on cheese, meat, and veg, huge amounts of vegetables and fruits. And I got rid of bread years ago because the gluten. I'd noticed that actually after bread, I had a bit of discomfort. But I was really upset that I was still eating things like, I thought, I'll help myself to some raisins. Oh, they gave me absolute jip. And then one day I'd have, well, every day I had fruit and veg, and I'd lived a life up until then. I'm going back a bit now, but many years I'd lived a life of mornings only, and I'd become a recluse really, and I could do anything you like in the morning before I'd eaten. Soon as I'd ate, that's it. I couldn't leave the house because this distended stomach gave me the most horrendous gas. I mean, it wasn't smelly gas. It was just loads of it, really noisy, and it was so embarrassing. I couldn't be with people, and I couldn't break in with people. So I would blow up like a balloon. It was so painful. So basically, I had to stay at home in the afternoons and evenings, where my family had got used to mum just when I would just carry on, and everyone just ignored me because I was okay with them. But if we had a guest or anyone like that, I was in trouble. Yeah, 2018, I see this nutritionist, and we're gradually over the weeks learning to reduce the plate full of veg, because I trained myself to eat these, just like if you look at a vegan on YouTube, those huge piles of salads and what they eat for lunch. I prepped all day long, chop, 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 chop. I was exactly like that, and so I had to train myself off of that. And actually, it was quite a lot of messing with my mind really, because I'd been doing that for so long, and sort of to not have that, I was like, oh, eating this. I eat cheese and meat. I was very nervous about putting on weight, because weight's been a big issue. Even though I'm not overweight, it has been a massive issue all my life. And that starts back in childhood. So I was fearful of putting on weight. So, eating all this meat and cheese, I might put on weight. But anyway, I managed to get my head round looking at a different plate. It took weeks. I mean, it's not easy. And after each meal, I asked me to rate it with a smiley face. And I've looked back through my book about how many miserable faces there still was. I made mistake after mistake because I had to learn a whole new way of eating. And so that went on for a while. And then what the idea with the FODMAP diet is that you reintroduce those foods, like the vegetables. And you could have like 2 sprouts, see how you go with that. And if you don't get pain after eating 2 sprouts with your roast dinner, then you might be able to have 3 sprouts. Anyway, every time I introduce something else, ruined. That's pain, and it's the same pain. I know it straight away. It comes on quite quickly. Thought, and it doesn't go off till really the next day when you wake up. Most of the time it's gone then. Although I used to get bruising because I've been so bloated, it used to actually bruise under my ribs, sort of soreness in my stomach area from the distension of the day before. Anyway, so in the end, I gave up with them. I just thought, I'm not going back. I've told them that I've managing, and I'd noticed in the books they do tell you which foods which. I thought, look at that, all the meat, I can eat as much as I like. There was no limitation on meat. I thought, I've always loved meat. I've always loved it. Steak has always been my absolute favourite. Only saved it for very special occasions because you don't want to eat too much red meat and all that malarkey. So I just started eating more and more meat and cheese, all the protein basically, eggs. And then I thought, because after all these dietary problems, I got osteoporosis, right? I had an early menopause. I've done hideous malnutrition I've had for years, basically. And it's turned out that I've got osteoporosis. So in my head, I kept thinking, I need to have the calcium, because here they tell you've got to have milk or cheese. You've got to keep up your calcium. So I better still eat yogurt. I didn't really like milk. And I started making my own yogurt. But that raised a problem because I made it in my slow cooker. So I bought a 4-pinter. I bought organic milk, thinking that'd be the best, and a little pot of starter yogurt. And it took about 3 days. I let it stay for a long time to ferment really well. It was delicious. I loved it. I was hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, Annette, you're obsessed. I was so obsessed. I had to knock it on the head because It's actually really yummy. I mean, I never touched yogurt before, only the ones with high fruit. I'd never touched a natural one, but it tasted so sweet to me because I sort of got rid of all the sweet. I didn't eat any sugar at all, and everything. That yogurt was delicious. Anyway, I had to knock it on the head. I thought, I can't do it because I'm obsessing with what's in the fridge. Is it lunchtime? Am I going to get me yogurt? All that sort of stuff. So I know me, it's no good. I'm not a moderator at all. I can't control myself. Anyway, and I've been without the yogurt for probably about a year now. I'm fine. And no one said to me, I haven't broken any bones, so I'm just carrying on the same. I take vitamin D3 and K2 as a sort of supplement I buy myself. The doctors did prescribe me a calcium with D3, but I got rid of that because I was a bit worried about all that calcium. They do say it might be going in the wrong place in your body. It might be going around your heart and then in the arteries. So I thought, well, get rid of that. And anyway, so I'm gradually narrowing down my food choices. And at that time, it was sort of the FODMAP time that I thought, I'm going to investigate this diet. Looks like I've been eating the wrong stuff all this time. So I hit YouTube, and that was the making of me. It was fabulous because I met, well, I have to say, I'll give a shout out to him because my first person who popped up was Eric Berg, not a carnivore, but he was well into keto. And I'd never heard of keto. No one here has ever heard of keto. In America, it seems like everyone has. Might be in London, but no one in Cornwall. It's just not a thing. And eating fat, my goodness, that was really like a new thing. These people were eating the fat. I couldn't believe it. We've been told don't eat any fat. And so yeah, I found Eric Berg first, but he said you had to eat all these cups of green vegetables. I thought, oh no, I can't be doing with it. I can't go there. So after he kept saying that, I thought, oh, I'll have to find someone else. And then Sean Baker was the next one that popped up. And back in the day, it must have been Sean's early days because he was in this previous house. And he took a little microphone with him and he walked his dogs in the morning. And he said he was only eating meat. And I thought, oh, a great big guy like him who's fit as he is. And I did do some fitness. I was, because of the osteoporosis, I was advised to do some strength training. So I did doing weightlifting resistance. And I quite like cycling. So I was doing a spinning class. So I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to see if I can do those things with meat. But it did take a long time. I have to say, to anybody who's had as much sort of malnutrition as I'd had for that many years, it took months and months and months for me to feel as good as I am now, or years to feel as good as I am now. Anyway, I met Sean Baker and he just ate the meat. And then that was it. I spent hours and hours, every waking hours, locked in my headphones, listening to Zoe Harcum. She doesn't eat any veg either. Well, she actually does, but she says you don't need the fibre, because I needed some doctor to tell me, because in my head, all those years of saying fibre, 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 I needed someone to say that I will be all right without it. Zoe Harcum, and then Dr. Chafee, and then I found out Jason Fung and the fasting thing, because actually I didn't need to eat so much. It was great. I could go for great long periods in the day, not even thinking about food, which was fabulous for me, because on that veg, I was always hungry. I was always thinking, oh, when's it lunchtime? And my children will know that I feel bad. I have apologized to them because I was such a moody cow. I was horrible about 5 o'clock in the evening. Horrible. Because not only was I in pain, I was also really desperately low on, well, it must have been blood sugar. I was ravenous. And if they ever delayed tea for me, evening meal, that is, we call it tea here, I was like, you need to get to the table, because I was desperate to eat. And I didn't really understand. I had no idea that my insulin and glucose and all that was way out of whack. I was on this massive roller coaster. And now I can see all of that, and I feel ashamed really that I lasted so long, because I should have twigged that actually this isn't right to live so moody. But it wasn't so clear cut, because in amongst all that, I had been self-medicating with alcohol, which I now realise is quite a common thing. When you're so sad with all of this going on, you're a recluse, you've got that far in the day, you're still in pain, you just think, oh, it was always the evenings. I lasted all day long, but by the evening, about 6 o'clock, I'd have the pre-dinner drink and think, thank goodness for that. Anyway, that alcohol hitting on the low blood sugar, I was not a nice person. I'm not a nice drunk. I'm moody, and I say stuff that I shouldn't say, but normally you reserve your thoughts to your own head, but that alcohol gave me a huge release. So I would do that most evenings, and my husband didn't like me very much at all. I wasn't a nice person, and every day I thought, oh, I won't be drinking tomorrow. Then I couldn't control that either. It became a habit, and I think that there's quite a lot of alcohol so readily available in the UK. Supermarkets have always got cut price alcohol, and these FODMAP books gave me my ticket, because I had seen that things like beer and all the sort of lower alcohol drinks, they've all got lots of carbs in. But gin, whiskey, brandy, no, they're low FODMAP. So actually, they didn't affect my guts. They did affect my brain. So they're smaller. Previous to that, I was on sort of lagers and sort of long drinks. These were shorts, and I got drunk so quickly. I'll tell you, it caused so many problems in their family, because I'd been really moody, then I was drunk, and I was on that sort of roller coaster for so long. My life was terrible. Anyway, once I learned, get rid of all that veg, don't have the yogurt, just eat meat, which took a long time. I took so long to look at my plateful when I sat down to meat and not see the vegetables on there. There was meat and eggs. I still do like a mixture of probably 3 things. And I thought I would get bored of it, but I never, ever get bored of it. For lunch, pretty much, to stop me having to worry about lunch, I pretty much have the same every day, which is I buy the cheapest mince, which is 75.25 in Aldi, the cheapest stuff. I buy a 500 container of mince, and I cut it into four, and it lasts me 2 days. So I have 2 burgers one day. So that would be 250 grams for lunch, plus whatever I've got. If I open a tin of sardines, usually 2 egg yolks go down, because that's a nice bit of moisture. I never ever get bored of that. It is delicious, and I use an air fryer. I know some people say you shouldn't use an air fryer, but watching all those videos which were all American, all the YouTube videos were all American at that time, they all had air fryers. I thought, what is this thing called an air fryer? No one in Britain at that time had ever heard of them. But I ordered mine off Amazon. I got it, and I was delighted with it. It was a brilliant tool. Now air fryers have become, every kitchen in the UK has got an air fryer. It's like the microwave, everyone's got one. But I was an early to that thing, and you could do cooked meat in next to no time. It was so easy. My meals were so quick, 9 minutes and my meal was ready, instead of in the oven for ages and ages. So it meant, I could eat all these meats that are basically, they're not convenient foods. I didn't have anything that was a processed meat at all. It was but it's so convenient, because I could eat cold the next day if I cooked a lot. Anyway, I've sort of got a bit jumbled up about where I am. So basically, over time, I've gone more and more carnivore, and I've absorbed more and more your channel. There's a girl in the UK called the Healthy Carnivore in the UK, I think she's called, and she's doing it for weight loss.
Sarah.
Yes, that's right. Oh, she's lovely. We have different issues because mine was always, I have to say that IBS is still there, because if I ever stray, which is very rare, it still gets me. So it's healed enough, because actually the healing, that's one thing I forgot to tell you, is the healing happened as soon as I stopped eating the fruit and veg. It was about, I would say, 2 weeks, zero pain, zero from all of that pain. I could eat a meal and walk away from the table. No farting whatsoever, not once. All day. It's like, I
So,
cannot believe
so in the evening now, the family can hear the TV when they want.
it. It has transformed my life, absolutely, from a sort of pretty much a recluse who was, I could never eat with other people as well. So meals out and family dues were always a nightmare for me, because I had to go, and I thought, once I've eaten, that's it, it's ruined for me. And if I could go somewhere quietly and sit for a while, um, uh, because I couldn't get rid of it. It wasn't low enough to come out. If while I was at the do or the meal, it took a long time to get to the lowest part of my body, and all that. Yeah. So people have said to me, "Oh, isn't it restrictive?" I think, no, I've got my life back. You don't realise. It's not at all restrictive. I can eat, and I've learned to eat in front of other people. I've been out for meals, very strict on what I will have. And it's been tricky to find places in Cornwall that will do what I have. But at the minute, we've got a group of friends from the gym, and they've accepted that I'm just a bit odd. They think I'm just odd. That I eat, this particular place will cook me sort of 4 or 5 eggs and 4 slices of bacon, and they've all sat down to their heaps of vegetables, and they're healthy. I've even got one person in the group is a vegan. I mean, she's going her own way and I'm going my way, and we're very accepting that that is what we both want to do. And because she will accept my way, I accept her way. A few years ago, I would have thought that she'd eaten the healthiest diet ever, but I don't now. So yeah, finding places to eat. So it's great. I can actually go out. And then we had a huge, my husband's siblings was 70, and just recently, and he wanted to go to a place that was it's called the Coddy Shack. It's a big fish place. And I studied that menu beforehand, because I went online, studied it. I thought, I can eat. They will do an unbattered, pan fried piece of cod, and it's just plain, no chips, no nothing. Just, it came with 2 slices of lemon, so I ditched them. And I had that, and it was fabulous. And it was quite interesting that it was an enormous group of people, and the place was serving us, bringing up 2 at a time. And I thought, where's mine? Where's mine? I haven't bought mine. And then they asked one of the other people further nearer the, who's for this one, when they bought my meal out. And the lady said, oh, it's the protein lady over there, pointing to me. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. She thinks I'm interested in the protein. Actually, there wasn't much fat with it, but then I can eat loads of fat in the evening, which I do eat a lot of fat. I was a bit worried about the fat to begin with, and the way I started cooking some of my steaks was in a pan, and the fat wasn't crispy, whereas the air fryer, the fat is delicious. So I do eat loads more fat than I ever did. I always thought I put on weight, but I actually haven't. The fat somehow is so satiating that I can sit down to a plate most evenings I treat myself to a steak. I like the ones in this country. I like what we call a sirloin. I eat all the fat with it. Few years back, I chop off the fat and give some to the dog. But no, I eat all of it, so the plate is completely gone. So I eat that, and I like pork bellies. I know it's pork and it's not beef, and I also like lamb. So I buy a joint of lamb, which I do in the air fryer. It doesn't take long. It is, I can sit down to all meat, no problem at all, or fish. And I eat a few eggs along the way.
Congratulations. I mean, this must be, after living like this for so long.
Yeah, I'm cross with myself that I lasted so long believing what I'd been told.
Well,
Yeah.
when you found Sean Baker that time and you decided, okay, I'm going to do this, after you kind of you found Eric Berg, he's talking about the cups of salad, and you're like, oh, hang on, we're having none of
Yeah.
this, and then you found Sean Baker. What time was that around? Was that like in the last year, in the last couple of years?
No, 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 no. That was much earlier, because what happened was I went berserk on his channel, commenting. I made comments all the time. So I was so overjoyed that I had a community. And in fact, if it wasn't for the YouTube community, I don't know whether I would have done it, because I'm so alone here. I didn't know anybody. No one had ever heard of anything. I couldn't talk to a doctor because they would have just poo-pooed it straight away. So YouTube was fantastic, and I commented on Sean's videos all the time. And then Sean went and invited me for a YouTube chat like this, and that was over 2 years ago. And and that's one thing I wanted to say, was that what I say today is what is now today, and it's current, and it might not be like this forever, because over 2 years ago, when Sean interviewed me, which was live and really nerve wracking, but what I said then was part way along my journey, and it's no longer applies. So that video is called Flatulence No More, and I was really cross with him for putting that in the title, because I didn't want it. I didn't want that. I was rid of it. I didn't want to be reminded of it. But the video, I found it. It is still there. And he was lovely. Oh, and I didn't tell my whole story, which I haven't done. I didn't tell my whole story with Sean, because there was the things I was ashamed of. I was ashamed that I was still on, at that time, still on citalopram, which I took for anti-anxiety prescribed by the doctor, because I was such an anxious person. Um, I didn't tell him about the alcohol. Um, so there was, I was really reserved, and I just talked about the no farting, basically. But I wanted to be a bit more honest in this video, because actually the whole thing stems from childhood. To take it way back to when I was a little girl, I was a really anxious child. I bit my nails for years. Nobody ever sort of said, oh, maybe that's an anxiety thing. I didn't know why I'd bit my nails. I just bit them. I hated school. I'm a bit dyslexic, so I didn't do well at school. I I had friends, but I was a very anxious person, and I didn't really understand why. And then, and as I said, food played a huge. I had two obese sisters older than me, and they put me down to not being an obese child because I was too fussy. I wouldn't have it. I got away. My sister said, "Oh, you managed to get away with murder." I was really a picky eater, and for that reason, I wasn't. I was the slim child out of the three of us. But food was a major thing in our family. So I always knew that I couldn't be fat, because being overweight was always an issue with my two sisters. And luckily enough, I wasn't, until I had a terrible experience, a terrible trauma in 2000. No, sorry, in when I was 24, basically. Um, and I married the wrong person. I didn't want to get married, but my parents basically said, "Oh, there's no going back." So I thought, "Oh, no going back. I'll have to marry him." He wasn't a bad person. He wasn't right for me. So I thought, oh, I've got no choice. Mum and Dad say I've got to do it, so I'll have to do it. I mean, that's how we were. It was quite a Victorian upbringing. You did as you were told. And I didn't really have the confidence to. I started going along this road of getting married, and I didn't really have the confidence to say, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. But I didn't feel that the wedding was right. And I got very, very anxious about it. And soon after I got married, I started to binge eat, and I didn't know why. I was just stuffing food down, and then I'd go for huge long periods with no food whatsoever, and I lost loads of weight. Everyone said, "Oh, she's anorexic." So I wasn't. I was bulimic, basically. I learned to bring the food up. So I was terrified of putting on weight because of what my two sisters had grown up with. They were still big. Um, and I knew how disapproved they were of their size. So I learned to bring up the food, but I was in that binge purge cycle for 10 years. So that's what I believe destroyed my guts. I mean, basically, that is really, really bad for you. So that's when I first went on the citalopram for anti-anxiety. And I basically, bulimia is, why I didn't die, I don't know, because I was very, very thin. I was hospitalized twice. You couldn't get out of hospital until you put on the weight. I didn't want to be in hospital, so I managed to keep enough down just to get back out again. And then I learned to keep a stable weight. For the next 10 years, I learned a stable weight with still keeping the habit. And it becomes a habit. I couldn't break this habit because I try breaking it, but then you get so hungry, you can't. So in the end, I'd end up eating, and then I'd overeat. I couldn't stop. It was a compulsion, and I hated myself because bulimia is very, very secretive. I couldn't tell anybody. I was so ashamed of what I was doing because there were starving people in the world, and I was eating huge amounts of food and flushing it all down the toilet. I was so ashamed, but I couldn't stop. And yet I was sort of a logical person back then, thinking, well, surely you can stop. And every day I'd say, right, I'm not going to do it today. But it's more than I could handle. It was an addiction, a total addiction. I was addicted to the habit, and I'd often do it 3 times a day.
It sounds like the
Initially, there is
alcohol, today is the day. Today is the day I'm not going to
yeah,
do it.
it
And
was
you
the same
can't.
as that. Yeah, it was the same. And initially, when you start to eat, there is a massive relief that your body is saying, oh, thank God she's eating. There's this huge sort of, oh, at last. However, I just couldn't stop because I wanted more. I was just eating more and more, and it didn't even taste nice. The first Mars bar, which we had these chocolate bars, the first one was great, but by the sixth, my mouth was really sore. So it wasn't a pleasurable thing, but I just couldn't stop doing it. And I honestly believe they are beginning, because I do look at the bulimia sort of websites to see what research is being done, and they are beginning to see that carbs are no good because it was all carbs. There was never anything, never protein, ever. Well, I never binge on that. It was all sugar, all of it, and bulk, whole loaf of bread, real big bulky carbs. But they've now realizing that actually the carnivore or high protein is what these people who are suffering from bulimia need to start eating, because it's so satiating, so that you don't have that massive drop afterwards. Because I was in a massive roller coaster back in those days. I lasted 10 years. I left my husband, and I was then thought, well, now what do I eat? But I realized he wasn't a bad person. I don't want to diss him. It just wasn't the right, and I needed to get out, and I didn't die. I thought, I'll either die or I'll get out, and eventually I built enough courage to get out. But I didn't know what to eat, so that's when, and I was constipated as well because nothing was going through, and I had piles. Now this adds to the problem. I had piles, and eventually I come to the top of a NHS waiting list for my banding of the piles, which is what the standard operation they do here. They put little elastic bands on the piles that gradually get rid of them. And so I went for that operation. Now, when was that? That's quite a lot later. Anyways, but so I'm flip flapping here, but I didn't know what to eat, and so I did. That's when I started on the veg, thinking, right, it's got to stay down. It can't be high calorie, because calories, that I was into the calories. Calories were huge here. They were even starting to put it on food packets, because they thought that people need to know the calories of everything. So I thought, what can I eat? So I thought, I'll eat the vegetables and the fruit. That. But obviously, that started the irritation, and I put up with that irritation. It wasn't so gassy to begin with. I put up with it because I thought, I've done the damage. My gut needs to heal. And all the voices around me were talking about the microbiome. Here in Britain, the microbiome is absolutely what you've got to look after. That is the way to good health. And I still watch some videos that are still banging on about that. And it's huge here in this country. That's the way you get all of your vitamins and minerals. And it's not you're feeding, it's the microbes you're feeding. And not only that, you don't just feed them, you've got to give them prebiotics, probiotics, which I tried all of that. I went down all that route. Trying to feed this microbe. So that's how I ended up with such a big one, basically, this huge gut that I ended up over the years feeding like mad. But along with that, with all that fibre, came the constipation. So constipation was, my mum suffered with it. So I was told, oh, it's in your family. It's in your family. Just eat more fibre, you'll be fine. So anyway, I did have that operation. And the next day, something had definitely gone wrong for me, because I was supposed to have no pain. It was supposed to be fine, but it wasn't. What I now know what happened to me is whatever happened inside me, my rectum, caused what's called a spasm of the bowel. It was agony. It was childbirthy agony after I'd gone to the toilet. It was for hours afterwards. It was so painful. I can't describe the pain. All I know is you couldn't do anything else. All you could do was grip your chair or bite, grip your fists, until eventually about 2 hours it took till the pain would subside. And I now know that is the bowel going into spasm. And it wasn't healing at all, because apparently whilst it's in a spasm, that cuts the blood flow off. So I went for several days thinking, oh, I'll just have to put up with it, until I couldn't. I went to A&E and I said, I have got this agony. And of course, I got to A&E in the evening, by which time the pain had subsided, because it only really got aggravated after a bowel movement, which was in the morning. So, and then they said, well, what's wrong with you? And I said, oh, I've got this terrible, every time I go for a poo, it's agony. Anyway, the guy who did the surgery, he was the consultant. He'd gone off on holiday. And so I had his team. And they had a conflab and decided, goodness knows why, that I needed an anus stretch. That's what I needed, right? And I'm there lying on the bed thinking, just do something. It's agony. Not really knowing what's what. And they said, I had to sign a bit of paper. Do I agree? And I never heard the words anus stretch, but
it sounds like a new kind of exercise.
It was terrible. It was so terrible. Anyway, so I wake up the next day and they said, you can't leave. And it all was quiet down there. They said, you can't leave hospital till you've had a bowel movement. Wow, my gosh. I thought it was agony before. It was, I was in tears. And the spasms were worse than ever. I was kicking my legs. I couldn't keep my legs. I just went on for hours kicking until eventually it calmed down. And I thought, oh, what have they done? I couldn't see, because you can't, I can't get there to see. I thought, what have they done to me? And I couldn't wait to get out of hospital, because I was so afraid. I thought, oh, this is absolutely terrible. And they said they call you in this country after you've had surgery, you get a 6-week check. And I thought, I'm not going back. Look what's happened to me. And I'd looked up on the internet what you can do for that. And somebody had said, oh, turmeric. Place your bum in a bucket of hot water with turmeric, the powder. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm on fire. Turmeric doesn't work for that. But there was quite a few, mainly Indian doctors, telling me, because I was desperate at this stage. I was absolutely desperate to stop hurting. I think this was, I can't remember, just trying to work out the time scale. This was before I'd found Carnivore. So this was before. But it all contributes for the fact that of my added fibre. That's how I got to eating so much fibre, because I went to the 6-week check and I begged the ladies. I said, "Oh, be really, don't touch. It's really agony," because it was still. I was so much pain. They did give me a cream. I don't know the name of the cream. You could only get it from the hospital, and you have to stick it up your backside, and it's supposed to stop the spasms. And it did work, but
this is 6 weeks later, though. It's still sore.
Yeah. My life was over. My life was over. I didn't do anything. I just was at home, just on a daily thing, trying to eat more fiber because I've been told to eat more fiber. It was an absolute roller coaster of a nightmare. I wouldn't go back in case I saw someone else. I wanted to have my 6-week check with the surgeon who did the original operation. And when he looked at me, he just drew in breath and went, "Oh, Annette, what have they done to you?" He didn't, and I was black and blue apparently. And he did tell me that actually they don't do that on women anymore. And I was in too much of a state to even think about. I could have sued the NHS for that, but I didn't, because I was so upset with the whole thing, because all I wanted was my life back, because it was really seriously over. I was in this, it was just terrible. But he carried on saying I needed to eat more fiber, even after all that. I mean, the cream eventually, this cream did subside the spasms, but it gave me the most horrendous headaches. Apparently, it dilated blood vessels to make sure that even though the bowel is in spasm and cutting off the blood, the blood vessels would dilate, because without the blood getting to that part, it won't heal. And I needed to heal, basically. So that it gave me the most monumental headaches, which I said I'll put up with, because I just need to heal. And I did eventually heal. However, the damage had been done, and I ended up in that hospital again and again, because that area, there's a thing, it's called fissulated, basically. The area of my body was ruined. I didn't have much muscle control, so I had all that to deal with, leakage and all that revolting mess, which I don't have anymore. That I have got that control back, but I can't afford to have any firm any stools that are
I just cannot imagine. Like, no wonder you're in a position where you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't. And people say, "Oh, surely your life is restricted." Restricted? Not a bit of it now. Because I manage that function. My anus is still not great, and so I don't eat any fiber. None. No fiber whatsoever. And I still take. I've got it here. One of these now. Yeah, these are a powder, and it's a stool softener. Now, I checked with the doctor, and she says that you can take these for life. It's just, what it does is it draws moisture into the bowel and makes the stool really soft. Now, I'd rather not take that. However, I cannot afford. I mean, look, I'm so envious of carnivores who have managed to not take anything, and after a few weeks, they say, a couple of weeks, the bowel sorts itself out. I can't afford to do that at all, because any firmness, I can't go, and then I'm bleeding and all the rest. So I'm sort of a carnivore, but I've got that sort of really annoying bit of my body that still is not healed properly, and I can't risk it, because I cannot be constipated, because it just rips, basically. It just rips if there's any firm store. So I do have to take them, and them in themselves create a problem, because that means I get dehydrated. I drink loads of water, and this one I've got here, I drink 2 of these with a mixture of electrolytes, which I've now made myself. I bought it off Amazon. I bought magnesium malate, potassium, and I have a sea salt, and I've used the internet to work out my proportions, and I take 2. It says up to 2 of these things that I've weighed out a day, and I'm on between 1 and 2, because the doctor has said that it's all very well you taking that powder, but you will be losing heaps of water, which it is. It's runny. I have to stay runny. My stool has got to be, I mean, it just has to be. So with that amount of fluid loss, I have to drink loads of water, and not just water though. she said that that in the bowel is where you reabsorb magnesium and potassium and all those things. So if it's shooting right through, you need to take more of them. And I have noticed that I used to get terrible cramp. Oh my gosh, the cramps were terrible until I discovered the electrolytes, and that's come through the internet. More and more people saying that, take Element or take something. So it's taken me a long time to work out exactly what to take, and it's still not perfect. I'm still a sort of in progress of. I haven't got this carnivore thing completely sorted with the body I'm in. I wish I didn't have this body. I wish I had one that could just, go do a poop, say twice a week or something. I really wish I could be like that, but I've got to live with what I've got. Basically, I've got this body, and the fact that there's been other things that have happened, and that citalopram I'd taken all those many years. After about a year on carnivore, I thought, hang on a minute, I can go out. I don't have any wind, no farting. I can eat. I'm actually quite enjoying my life. I'm nowhere near as stressed as I used to be. I was like a flat line in terms of blood sugar, just flatline all day. It was fantastic. Even after lunch, just stayed completely calm. I thought, I'm gonna, and I've been told, oh, it's in your family. You've got low serotonin in your brain, so you're just. And previous to that, I had tried to come off of these antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs because I didn't really want to be on them. But every time I came off, I had a meltdown, and back on I went, and I was on the maximum dose, and so was my two sisters and both my parents, all on the same drug, citalopram. Yeah, all of us. And I thought, right, I'm going to be the one who's going to see if I can come off it. It took me about 9 months because you can't come off immediately. That's really not good news. Weaned off, gradually reduced the dose till I thought, well, it was about November, a couple of years ago now. I decided to take none. It's like, oh, and I thought, oh, I'm doing all right. And then Christmas is always a bit of a stressy time, isn't it? And of course, I had to go for Christmas meals. It was like, oh no, I'll just have the meat. And that did cause, back in those days, I was very nervous about saying, oh no, I just want all the meat. Because the rest of my family, they're all into all the healthy veg. They're still on that. So I did get a bit of anxiety, but I don't need to use it now, but I used long, slow breathing technique, and it worked. I was astonished because I'd learned never worked before, but I managed to calm myself down, and I got through Christmas. I thought, well, I'm off it. I'm off it, and I'm really pleased because that's all those years of taking that, and it's only in the last probably 6 months I found Georgia Eid and the fact that it's a thing. It's a thing. I had already done it though. I'd already decided myself to come off of those and feel okay. And I did carry on getting them from the doctor because I was so worried. I thought, oh, what if I need them again? And since 2000, it's impossible to see a doctor in the UK. So I carried on with my prescriptions, and but I just didn't take them. It was like my little security. I thought, and then I just stopped. I just thought, that's it. So that's another major part of my life. I'd had that high anxiety for donkey's years. And so in my family, we were all like it. We were all eating that same high carb diet. It's the carbs. And even though there's plenty of people on the internet say it's not the carbs, it was for me. Because I'm astonished with the diet I've got. I eat to capacity. I do eat, from, as Ken Berry says, comfortably stuffed, which I love that term. I do. And then I just think, God, I'm full. And I move away from the table, and that's it. I don't think, oh, what else can I have? Which it was always, oh, I still felt, because when I was eating all that fruit and veg, even though I was physically full, because there's this thing that if you eat a lot, eat a lot of fruit and veg, you will stop eating because your stretch receptors will tell you you're full. That's rubbish. Yes, your stretch receptors do tell you, but you still want more. I always wanted more. I was always hugely
Yeah.
full, farting all afternoon, desperately hungry. And now I'm just never hungry, which is fabulous. I mean, by lunchtime, I usually eat my lunch by between 2 and 3. So I've gone all night, all morning, and between 2 and 3, if I'm at home, which I work from home, so that's fine, I'll have my lunch. I finished, you know, and I keep going until I don't want any more. I don't limit myself, which is something really for an ex-bulimic, that's really a magical thing, to keep going, to feel that fullness and not A, want to throw it up, and B, be able to just leave the rest. You know, if I'm full, I'll have that later. And then again, with the family, I do a lot of cooking. I mean, I I've got 2 children, adult children, live at home, and a husband, and they have not joined me. However, they haven't got a problem with carbs. It doesn't give them any pain. So, I mean, I would still love them to join me, because I can see that inside, you know, the glycation and all that, I'm sure that's not doing them any good. However, they come from Cornish family with all those cakes and stuff. They're not giving up their sweet stuff.
But they're happy for you, right?
They're really happy for me. Yeah, they've seen a transformation in my life, because they've seen all that stuff. They've seen my moods. They've seen me on the alcohol. They've seen me on those pills. They've seen all of it, and they're like, "Wow, well, whatever it is, Mum's a much nicer person to be with, and she can do stuff." I mean, talk about limitations. I was so limited. I've been limited for years for one reason or another, whether it be binging or the farting. I've had years of it. It's fabulous for me. Um, and it, well, I think it's interesting. In the group of friends I've got, my gym friends, we go out everybody's birthday. We go out, and we did need to change from the restaurant we were going to, because the restaurant had, since the pandemic, they had narrowed their menu down to the profitable stuff for them, which basically, because I was already ordering just on the bone ham and eggs, which is something they supplied, and I could forego all the rest. It came with chips, but got rid of all of those to my friends. But since the pandemic, they narrowed it down, so everything was coated in some sort of breadcrumbs. You know, they got rid of all the basic stuff that they didn't add, you know, that wasn't a huge markup for them. So my meal had gone off the menu. So I asked, I did have a meal there. Agony again. Thought, oh, I'm not better. I know it's not healed properly. So they agreed to find this other place. However, the last time we went, it was actually my birthday, and they asked me, "Don't you miss all the foods?" And it was a serious question. I thought, no, I don't. I honestly don't miss all that. I know ice cream is delicious, but not for me. I know I do treat myself to the most delicious meats. I definitely do. And people say, "Oh, it's really expensive." Well, actually, adding up mine against what I buy for the rest of my family, because I'm still buying the peanut butter and the ketchup and all of that. If you were to add it all up, I don't think mine is any more expensive than all of theirs.
If you had a friend come to you and say, "Look, I want to get started," how would you advise them to get started?
Well, what I say to people ask me about my body, because actually I do still go to the gym, and I've got actually quite a nice body. Lots of women look at me and think, "Geez, look at her. How does she stay like that?" Because you know, I've got muscles. I'm 64, and it's quite hard to maintain muscles. Um, and there's plenty of larger ladies that I know they. Anyway, I cannot say I'm carnivore. I just can't. It's too freakish for them. So I say I don't eat any processed foods. And that seems to be acceptable, because I say I eat what my grandmother ate. But
Yeah.
annoyingly, nobody has said, "Oh, I'm going to try that." It's almost like, no, because they're stuck on the healthy fruit and veg. The ones I go out for the meals with, they're all into their, oh yes, I've had blood tests, I'm all right, I'm eating all my fiber.
Do you have any way that people can reach out to you? Do you have
Well,
any
I was
social
thinking about that.
media
You've
or?
asked, yeah. I don't. I have a Facebook page, but I don't really use it anymore. I did shared a couple of Facebook carnivore things on there, and then I got there's a thing that you anyway, my hacked. That's right. Kept getting hacked, and I was told, oh, that's that misinformation you're putting out there. so I don't use that. But I am happy for my email because I'd love to meet someone else. My email, I don't know whether you've got that or whether I've given it to you.
Right. Yeah.
But if we can, I'll give that to you, and I'm happy for that.
I'll put your email in the show
Thank you.
notes. Thank you so much for coming
I,
on and sharing your
it's
story,
so
Annette. I
nice to
really
talk to
appreciate it.
somebody. It's so nice to talk to somebody who understands.